Welcome to Papillion UnScripted. I'm Michael Severe. It's the place to go to hear from people who truly help make Papillion feel like home. Our guest this week is one of the greatest softball players of all time, and that's not hyperbole. She actually is. Hall of Famer all over the place, whether it's Nebraska, the Omaha Hall of Fame. Her numbers retired at the University of Nebraska as well. She was the Big 12 Player of the Year and twice finalist for National Player of the Year. Peaches James Keaton joining us, of course, the former Monarch, sitting here with us. We appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, thank you. Absolutely. It's
you
great
have by
to be
far
here.
the longest intro of anybody we've had so far.
Oh, thank you.
You qualified for everything. Growing up in this area, what was that like?
It was great. I actually grew up just outside of Papillion, in Omaha, and then we moved here in my high school years, and we loved it. You know, I loved it here. It was great. Great area, great people. Loved high school here, so yeah, it was great.
It's funny when you think about people nowadays, kids at 6 and 5 years old are out there playing softball. This wasn't your first sport, and you didn't pick it up till what, you're around 10 years old?
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't start until I was 10, and then it actually wasn't even my first love. Volleyball, I loved volleyball, was kind of my thing. And once you got to high school, they're in the same season, so I kind of had to give it up once I got to high school. But yeah, so it's interesting now. My littlest daughter, we started her in t-ball, and she's 4, and I never started that young. It's just interesting that they're starting much younger now.
So who convinced you to do softball since you loved volleyball?
It was my mom. My mom grew up they had a family team, softball team, and she loved playing it, and she thought, she got my brother into baseball at the same time, was like, hey, try out softball, she used to play, and so that's how I got started.
They say that it takes 10,000 hours to be great at something. Who was the person in the backyard or on the field catching all those balls from you to make you great?
Mom.
Really?
It was Mom, it was Mom, up until she just said she couldn't do it anymore.
Bet.
Once I started to get a little bit better, she's like, I can't do it anymore. I broke her thumb at one point, and she was like, you know what, her catching days were over then. Right. But yeah, it was her all throughout my childhood.
That's awesome. And so I'm assuming you went to certain coaches to kind of get better. Did she follow along to kind of help you when you're at home with that kind of stuff?
She did. She did. She went to, every time I went to like a camp or pitching, she was usually the one catching for me and trying to listen in so that when we got home and we were practicing, she could, help me, give me some pointers, remind me kind of what they had told me. So yeah, she was the one that was like, hey, it's time to practice again once we get home. So yeah. What
was the point when you hit your stride, when you felt like you were really good at it? Was it before high school? Was it during high school?
Gosh, I almost want to say college, maybe later in my
I think you had your stride in high school.
It took me a while to really, it took me a little bit to really just feel like I was confident in myself and like, oh, you know what, I am good. I can do this, So probably later in my, Papillion days and getting in, then kind of took a step back in college because, a freshman again, and now you're kind of finding your way there. So it took me a little bit there again to kind of build back up that confidence and say, hey, you know what, I can compete at the D1 level.
We had Jordan Ball here a couple of weeks ago, and I was asking her about when you're expected to not even give up a hit, because that was basically you in high school, right? You had 11 straight no-hitters and you had perfect games. What's that pressure like going in every game knowing that people expect you to not even give up a hit?
Yeah, you try to not think of it in that aspect. You try to think about, hey, I have, 8 other girls that are out here on the field that are going to have my back. And that was one thing once I got to college that my pitching coach, Lori Sipple, talked a lot about hey, she would always say a grounder is just as good as a strikeout. A pop-up is just as good as a strikeout. It's, essentially saying that, hey, like, just work to get ground balls or, not looking for the strikeout, or you don't have to be perfect out there. You have, 8 other great teammates that are there for you. And that kind of takes some of that pressure off to know that I don't have to be perfect and have to have no hitters, and that you have great hitters behind you too. So if you give up 1 or 2 runs, it's okay because you have great hitters on your team too.
Growing up in the South, I saw a lot of young African-American girls playing softball because it was in New Orleans, and that's what we have. I'm assuming that's not what you saw growing up. So who did you look at when you were coming up through high school to kind of emulate what they did, like as a mentor or someone that did it doing what you're doing, that looked like you?
That's an interesting question, and they're really, like you said, I really didn't have that experience. They're really, especially at the pitching position, there weren't very many African Americans females that were really doing it, especially when I was younger. As I got older, there were more, out there that I looked up to. But yeah, growing up, I usually would just kind of, Emily Townsend was a Papillion Monarch before I started here, and she wasn't a pitcher. She was just a really good player here at Papillion, and she used to wear the number 42 as well.
Nice.
She was someone that I looked up to. So yeah, I just tried to find, any type of role model at that point. But yeah, as I got older, I did try to seek out, more African American females to kind of look up to. But yeah, when I was growing up, I didn't really have that.
I mentioned you had 42 retired at Nebraska. Was it a Jackie Robinson thing? Did you look at him when you were a kid, kind of as a pioneer?
Yeah, definitely. He was definitely one of the reasons why I chose the number 42 as well, with him kind of breaking down those barriers, those color barriers as well. Just kind of gave me that inspiration as well, and feeling proud to wear his number.
Yeah, a lot of great players that have come after you. Like I mentioned, Jordan Ball was here.
Yes.
But nobody winning 4 state championships. You're on that kind of run. Again, I asked you about pressure for you individually. Team pressure when you're continually winning like that all those years?
Yeah, there was. I mean, every year, we were definitely saying, hey, our goal was always to win a state championship, but we did try to not put that pressure on ourselves to, to have perfect seasons. Of course, we always strive to, have perfect seasons. We never did have a perfect season, which was okay. We had losses in there every single year, but you always are going to strive for that, and you try not to put too much pressure on yourself, but it's always going to be a goal for you every single year.
Yeah, I know there was a team recently that went undefeated and didn't ever trail in a game. I can't imagine what kind of high school career that would be.
I know.
You when you were in college, you put up, you went 98 and 38. You had a 1.19 ERA. How did you lose 38 games? How did, not you lose, but how did your team lose 38 games that you started pitching at when you had a 1.19 ERA? A lot of 1-0 losses?
Yeah, and I don't remember the statistic, but they had given a statistic. I think it was like if we were ever up by 2 runs or something like that we were winning. Yeah. So we did lose a lot of ball games that were like 1-run games, very close games, a lot. And so now, as I'm watching the game now, it's great to see that the scores aren't always, so tight, 1-0, 2-1. Now I'm seeing 8-run games. I mean, just watching the College World Series, you think about Oklahoma. You mentioned Jordan Ball. I mean, they're winning games like run ruling, people all the time, and that wasn't, we didn't really have a team that was just doing what Oklahoma did this year, run ruling people. But yeah, so lost a lot of, those close games that year.
With the incredible numbers you had in high school, I'm sure you could have gone wherever you wanted. Why Nebraska? Why did you choose to stay home?
Ever since I went to my first Nebraska softball camp when I was 12. First time I met Rhonda and Lori, and ever since then.
Rhonda was the head coach even back then?
Yeah, yes, they've been coaches for a long time. Yes. But that first camp, was really when I fell in love with Nebraska and fell in love with the coaches. They were just amazing, and I went to other camps there, and although I went on other recruiting visits and things like that, my heart just, always tugged me back to Nebraska and wanting to be a Husker.
What was that freshman year like? You mentioned taking a little bit of a step back, but everybody knows you, you're staying at home. There's this anticipation of you being great right away. What was that like?
Yeah, I think that nerve-wracking. I usually was nervous anyway, but I think stepping out on that field for the first time as a freshman too. You're in your home states. Individuals that are in the stands, and those expectations are there. So yeah, it was definitely nerve-wracking, but I think. Once, again, you have to take that pressure off yourself, knowing that, hey, just go out there and do your thing. Don't worry about all the external things that a lot of times you don't have control over. Things. Just do what you do, out on the field, and not worry about all those other things that adds pressure. Yeah.
2002, you make the College World Series. What was that feeling like? I tell people who go to the College World Series here in Omaha, it's a great atmosphere. The atmosphere there is amazing. The whole town loves the event. What was that experience like for you guys?
Oh, it was amazing. It was amazing. It was definitely a goal. Again, it's always a goal. You're trying to win a championship, but first thing is to get there is your first goal. And so, gosh, to this day, I can remember that last regional game that we won, knowing that we were going to the World Series. And then once you get there, it's like no other, it's like no other, you don't really have that experience throughout the season like you do once you get to the World Series, and just the crowds you have and the cameras and just everything about it is just amazing. And so it's great to see, and it's growing, again, like I was watching the World Series this year, and it's growing, and it's just so many great things happening in the sport.
I know you stay around the sport doing different things, but you have a chance to talk to Jordan Ball at all? I was thinking when she was here that there's really nobody else that can relate to her, in terms of what she went through as a softball player. You certainly can. Have you guys had a chance to chat?
It's been a little bit. I have been to a couple events that she was at and getting awards at and stuff. I was a speaker at one event that she was getting an award at. So a little bit here and there. I haven't spoken to her lately, but here and there we've had a chance to chat a little bit. Actually, my first interaction, not with her, but it was actually with her grandfather. I went to a softball game. She was a freshman at the time. And one of my teachers, my old teachers, he had said, "Hey, did you know my granddaughter, Jordan Ball, out there? She's going to be great." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, that's awesome."
He was right.
And, yes, and he was so right. He was so right. And so, ever since then, I kind of had my eye on her. And at the time, I think she was still committed to Nebraska at the time. And
she
so
committed in ninth grade, or excuse me, like 9th or 10th grade.
Oh,
she committed.
wow.
Yeah, I know.
That's just,
Really,
they're committing so much younger, too. That's just interesting. But I'm glad they give them time to, make a different decision if they need to, like in her case, as she probably progressed and got better and things just changed, she saw Oklahoma was a better fit for her. And I think that's important when you're so young, kind of making that decision that's going to affect, your future and after high school. Makes a difference. But
what would you say when you look back at your 4 years in Nebraska, and not just on the field, but like going to school there, being a student? What did it teach you the most, do you think? What did you learn those college years?
Oh, wow. I would say mental toughness was the main thing.
That's
mental
huge.
toughness. It really was huge for me because I really got in my head a lot. I got in my head. I let external things, I let, how the weather was that day or how the umpire was that day or just different things that you don't always have control over to affect how you're physically performing. And so one thing that I really grew in just that mental aspect, when you're mentally tough, when no matter what the circumstances are, no matter who your opponent is, no matter what the weather's like, all those things can be mental things that you have to get through. And so that was really the main thing I learned, was just how to be mentally tough and how to persevere through different situations.
What did you use to? Everybody's got something. Michael Jordan played cards. Tim Duncan went swimming to get his mind off it. What did you use as a hobby or something to be able to kind of pull your mind away from that to kind of relax a little bit?
Yeah. I used to go to our rec center a lot on campus. We just had the campus recreation center where I would just go walk on the treadmill, maybe run on the treadmill, used to bike a little bit. I love biking. And so that's one thing I would do, is just go ride the bike for a little bit or something like that, just to not necessarily, it was a way that I was like, okay, I'll keep myself in shape a little bit when I'm not, but it's not, I'm out there pitching, and, it gives other muscles in my body a rest, but it gave me a chance to still kind of exercise, but, kind of in a way that was just soothing to my mind and take me away from the game a little bit.
You need that sometimes.
Yeah.
When you left Nebraska, there wasn't exactly the big opportunity to play professionally, but you did have a chance to do that. What was that experience like?
Yeah, it was a great experience. It was definitely different. So when you think about it, with men's sports, usually going from college to professionals, they're now, their experience is great. A lot of times they're, making tons of money, and their experience is just a lot different than when you have a sport to where it's growing. There's not a lot of money in it. You're not making very much money. You're back to sometimes riding the bus to places where, in college, you're flying places, so it was definitely a different experience coming from, a great place like Nebraska that has tons of resources for you. You have the fans and all those things, going there to where you don't have a fan base, right away. My first year I played in Houston, Texas. And so, it was, and at that time.
Where'd you guys play your home games?
We played at, what was the field called? I cannot remember.
Was it a college field?
What the field was called.
Was it the Rice field? Was it Rice's field?
Maybe at the University of Houston.
Oh, okay. I know what you're talking
think.
about. Yeah.
But the first year I it was the first year at the time. It was called the NPF, National Professional Fast Pitch, and it was the first year of it coming out since they had the WPSL. And so yeah, it was just growing, just starting out. So we didn't have very many fans in the stands.
Right.
We, there were 6 teams at the time, so we were constantly traveling to New York, to New England, just to those 6 teams at the time. And so it was a really great experience, to play with some of the girls that we were just opponents, in college. So it was kind of cool to now be playing with some of those girls. But yeah, it was definitely a different experience than college. And again, that's just because our sport was still growing and things like that.
What are you doing now with yourself?
I work at Woodman Life, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I work at Woodman Life, Scrum Master there.
You coaching people there? Is that kind of like that? Mentally coaching them? What's a Scrum Master? What does that mean?
Yes, it's similar to a project manager.
Okay.
So I work with a group of IT professionals who work on, in the information technology space, and just work with them on collaborating and, meeting our project deadlines and things like that. So, yeah.
And then 2 kids?
2 kids, yes.
Keeping you busy?
Oh, for sure. Yep. 12-year-old son, 4-year-old daughter. Yeah. Definitely.
Any hobbies?
I wish I had hobbies. It's kind of like they're my hobbies, I guess. They're all taking them all their
activities. If you still like riding, we have
activities.
great mountain bike trails in Papillion. If you ever want to come and just ride a mountain bike.
I would love that.
We have lots of those.
I would love that. I love biking.
My boss is an expert at mountain biking. He can get you the right trail and everything.
Oh,
so
awesome.
If you want to do
I'm going to hit him up after this because I love biking and love a good trail.
We appreciate it. Well, thank you very much, Peaches. It's good seeing you again.
Thank you.
I did have a chance at the AAA. You pitched at the AAA thing when Dale Strawberry was there.
That was fun.
One of the greatest events as a Met fan that I could have experienced.
Yeah.
And it was fun being out there with you as well.
Fun.
That was a really good time.
Awesome. Well, good to see you again.
Good seeing
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you very much, Peaches. Join us again next time when we again speak with someone who truly helps Papillion feel like home.